Hi everyone, it's Dixon here, and in this video I'm going to be providing a full review of the AirPods Pro. Just before we get started, if you're new to my channel, I provide full in-depth reviews of tech products, so please hit that subscribe button, it really helps me out. Otherwise, let's get to it. I think the design on these is probably one of the main reasons why these have been so successful to date. At a first glance, you'll see the small case in that nice white glossy finish, which has become quite synonymous with Apple products. And quite quickly you'll see that you can easily slip this inside of your pocket, no trouble. So in terms of convenience, this just comes in real handy. The AirPods and the AirPods case combined, so when you've got everything stored inside that case, is very light. And when you open up, you're presented with the very tops of both AirPods, and you'll notice that little status light, the LED indicator on the front of the case itself. A great little feature is that these AirPods are magnetized, so you'll notice that when you put them near the inside of the case, they will snap into position, so there's no risk of you accidentally putting them in incorrectly and resulting in them not charging properly, which actually happened a lot with my Powerbeats Pro, so I think this is a nice little touch. Speaking of nice touches, you'll notice with the rubberized tips that actually if I take them out, you'll see that there is like a little mesh netting style thing just inside, and this actually prevents any earwax from reaching the main drivers of the AirPods. So again, this is a nice little touch, which means they're protecting your AirPods from getting loads of wax and any other damage inside. Out of the box, they do have different sized rubber tips, so you can pick the size to your liking. I found that the ones out of the box fit me just fine. The AirPods Pro don't feature any physical buttons for your controls, so what you're actually doing is squeezing the exposed tip just beneath your ears. So squeeze once to play or pause, twice to skip a track forwards, and 3 times to skip a track backwards. Nice and simple. My only complaint with these is that they don't feature a volume control, which I think is actually quite annoying, especially if you're going out for a run as an example, because you have to rely on your separate device, whether that be your iPhone or maybe an Apple Watch, which is a little more convenient. So perhaps in the newer version, I'd love to see that volume control added. Otherwise, no complaints from me, controls work fine. So overall, as you can quickly see, these are incredibly practical. They look stylish, they definitely look very Apple, and when you place them in your ears, I think they also look extremely minimalist, so they are so small that you're not really going to notice that they're there until you get up close. So if that's your style, these are definitely going to work for you. If you're using these headphones with an Apple product like your iPhone, iPad or MacBook, then connectivity with these is still going to be market leading for quite some time. So these offer the H1 chip, so connecting for the first time is incredibly simple. Just open up the case near your unlocked phone and then click on the connect animation and follow the steps and you are ready to go. It is that simple. And from then onwards, every time you open up that case, you'll be presented with the beautiful graphic of the AirPods rotating, letting you know the current battery status of both the case and the AirPods themselves. So really slick interface, and of course with newer versions of iOS you can also add little widgets on screen to keep track of that battery life indicator. The H1 chip makes it incredibly simple to switch between one Apple device and the other. So if you're listening to music on your iPhone as an example and then open up the laptop lid for your MacBook, you'll get a little notification saying that it's nearby. You can click on connect and transfer playback through your second device. So it's just become so easy if you're invested already in the Apple ecosystem. So connectivity on these is brilliant. Naturally, if you're an Android user, you'll just have to stick to regular Bluetooth connectivity. That will work absolutely fine, but you just won't be able to benefit so much with features like this. Placing the AirPods in your ears is incredibly easy, and this is actually quite important if you want to form a good seal with those rubberized tips in your ear, especially for things like bass feedback. For some of you out there, I know that there is concern about putting earpods in your inner canals because it can give you a sense of a lot of pressure at times. But the good news is that with these AirPods Pro, you'll notice there is like a little black mesh. These are like little vents either side, and that helps the air flow through more naturally into your ears, helping to alleviate any sense of pressure. I've worn a lot of in-ear headphones over the years, and I can honestly say that these are probably among the most comfy. They're incredibly light, you form a seal very well, and to be honest, after many hours of extended use, I still don't actually notice that I'm wearing them. I've always had issues with AirPods over the years because they just don't stay in my ears. They just fall out or they rotate, and they just never worked for me. And this goes all the way back to the original iPod days. But with these, they do stay in my ears, and that is the case when I go out for a run and I'm shaking my head around or whatever. These will not fall out. So if you are worried that you've had the same issue, I can promise you that these stay in without any issues. So that's been a great plus for me. Overall, these are incredibly comfortable, and I'd say that you just forget that you're wearing them. So if you're having like an hour-long phone call or listening to music, walking around the city or something, you will be blissfully unaware that you've got these in your ears. So comfort on these is fantastic. When it comes to sound, I notice quite a big difference in the EQ when I have the noise cancellation active versus switched off. So with the noise cancellation active, you definitely get a much warmer playback experience, so you get much punchier bass as an example. But I found that this all meant that things like mids can get a bit muddy at times, and actually some of the higher frequencies can almost be a little bit distorted. So after extended periods, I just found this a little bit fatiguing. When I switch the noise cancellation off, I generally find the EQ to be far more balanced, which means that you can hear things like mids much better, and it's just generally separating sounds much better than when we have noise cancellation switched on. Generally speaking, when it comes to sound playback, if you're listening to genres like rock or metal, that sort of stuff, then it's not quite so great at separating sounds, naturally because there's just a lot more happening. So things like the bass and other frequencies can start to overwhelm a little bit. But when we're listening to less busy tracks, so things like from Fleetwood Mac, it does separate sounds very well, and I found myself really enjoying what it had to offer. I also find that these perform really well with dance tracks. So when I've been out for my runs, I have a lot of sort of dance style tracks with lots of bass and stuff. And actually combined with the noise cancellation, I think these offer a good playback experience for that type of music. Overall, given that these are small earbuds, I think the sound is decent. It's not going to blow your socks off or anything, but it does offer a mostly balanced playback experience depending on your settings. And to be honest, I think if you actually play with the EQ settings on things like your Spotify app or whatever, you can probably adjust it to actually get a slightly better playback experience. The AirPods Pro offer spatial audio, which is in effect 3D audio playback. So it interprets 5.1, 7.1 and Dolby Atmos, and it basically plays back music so that it's much more 3D, like a cinematic experience. So it's a really cool feature to have. Just bear in mind that it's not currently available with a lot of content out there, but I guess quite naturally, if Apple start to offer these features, I'm sure that the market will start to follow. On top of this, when paired with an Apple device, so if I'm holding up my iPhone and listening to a movie which is supporting spatial audio, if I move my head around and rotate it, it will actually change the orientation of the playback to make it sound like these sounds are actually coming directly from the phone itself. So again, a cool feature, not something I've ever really wanted to use, but something to be aware of. Naturally, if you're an Android user, this won't be available. Something I found with the AirPods Pro is just how convenient these are for phone calls, and for that reason I find myself using these much more than originally anticipated. So I normally just listen to music quite a lot, but because you can put them in your ears and forget that they're there, you're far more likely to pick these up and just start using these as part of your day-to-day tech. The microphone itself is pretty accurate, so when I've been using it, people can hear me quite clearly, especially if you're working from home as an example. And also when you get voice feedback, it's nice and clear your end as well. So if you are thinking about using these for phone calls, I'd say that these are good enough for most of you out there. Another reason why I think these AirPods Pro remain so successful is because they now offer active noise cancellation and transparency modes. So historically, this sort of technology many years ago was just for the larger over-ear headphones from the likes of Bose. but now all of these features are packed into these tiny little AirPods. And I'm pleased to say that the noise cancellation on these I found in general really good. So when I'm going out for a run and I'm running alongside a main road, it does a great job of cancelling out the busy traffic. And that means that basically I can listen to music at a lower volume, which, to be completely honest with you, is a good thing, because when I'm running I can sometimes pump up that volume a bit too loud. Transparency on these as well is surprisingly good, so you can hear things like birds singing to your left and groups of people talking to your right. So if you want to use that sort of feature, these are going to do a great job of it, especially when it comes to things like crossing a road when you've got lots of busy traffic going on. So this is a great safety feature to have. I also wanted to test how well transparency mode performs when you're listening to music quite loud. So I tested it here in the office, and for simple, subtle sounds like when I'm placing my glass down after drinking, you do hear it quite clearly as if you actually got the headphones off, which is really cool. So yeah, I'm really impressed with both the ANC and transparency modes, and how great it is that these are all packed into these little AirPods. Apple claims that your AirPods Pro will last for 4.5 hours of listening time and 3.5 hours for talk time. Naturally, every time that you place your AirPods back into the case, they start charging. And so what they actually say is that you can get around 24 hours of listening time if you're putting them back in the case, and around 18 hours for talk time. The AirPods Pro also support fast charging, so after charging them for 5 minutes in the case, you'll get an hour of listening time or talk time, which is really handy to have. When it comes to testing the battery, I like to stick to just hour-long tests so you just get a clear sense of what's actually happening. So I did 1 hour with noise cancellation, listening to music, 1 hour with transparency, listening to music, 1 hour with a phone call with no transparency or noise cancellation active, and I found that across all of these it was actually quite similar, so the average was around 20% battery usage. With ANC or transparency mode disabled, you'll probably get around 3 to 4% extra, just in case you wanted to know what the difference is. So there is a little difference, but I wouldn't say it's so massive that you wouldn't want to start using ANC or transparency features, because they're so good. So given that you're going to be putting these AirPods back in your case after use, I'd say that getting around 4 to 5 hours is going to be perfectly sufficient. I don't think there's ever been a time when I've had them in my ears for longer than maybe 2 or 3 hours. Maybe if you're one of those people, then these aren't for you, but I'd say for the majority of us, it's perfectly adequate. And considering you can get around 24 hours in total by just popping them back in the case, which in turn you can place in your pocket, these are incredibly practical. Going back to my earlier point, another great feature is just how practical these headphones are. So as you will have seen throughout my review, the AirPods Pro are packed full of features, all within a very practical, tiny little case, which you can just throw in your pocket or your bag with ease. And all of this basically means that you'll find yourself using these AirPods for a lot of different situations, which is why these continue to be so popular. They offer decent sound, the noise cancellation is good, and transparency mode comes in real handy, and so all of that combined means that these are very much recommended from me. These are still quite expensive though, so at around £200 to £250 here in the UK, so let's just say $200 to $250. So it's not cheap, but I think that if you are someone that frequently listens to music, wants to use them for phone calls, that sort of stuff, and maybe a bit of sport, so running, you will find yourselves using these so much, that I guarantee. And whilst I do recommend these, just a word of caution, these have been out for quite some time, so just be aware that it may be that newer models actually come out within the next 6 months, maybe even a little bit sooner. But if you're happy to pay that price right now, I don't think you'll regret it. Just bear in mind that they will perhaps come down in price in around 6 months' time, or maybe if you're someone that really wants to have the latest and greatest, then perhaps it's worth just holding on for a little bit longer. So those are my recommendations. I've covered all of the features which I think are useful for you to be aware of. I hope you found it useful. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments down below. Happy to answer them. Otherwise, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you soon.